Animation plays a big role in how fighting game characters feel to play. So how does a franchise over 3 decades old evolve its characters through animation? One of the best examples of this is the iconic Street Fighter duo, Ryu and Ken. Two sides of the same coin, they originally appeared in the first iteration of Street Fighter as almost identical characters, sharing the same moves and sprite work as a smart way to get more mileage out of that early development. Over the years and across many fighting game titles, the two slowly began to develop their own unique moves and animations. These changes help define not only their playstyles, but their character, who they are, and how they fight. In Capcom's latest entry, Street Fighter 6, Ryu and Ken are the most distinct they've ever been, and in this video, we'll break down how the animation helps to convey those differences. In Street Fighter 6, all characters have their own unique moves called special moves. These moves would be easier to go over as they can be visually completely different, but for the sake of getting into the animation details in the game, we'll only be going over the 6 normal attacks, or normals, in the game. Light punch, medium punch, heavy punch, light kick, medium kick, and heavy kick. All characters in the game have these 6 attacks, so it's a good place to see what subtle differences the animators made to make these moves feel unique within the exact same context. Another obvious change in this version of Street Fighter is their outfits. Ken is trading in his gi for a jacket, and Ryu is donning a fancy new robe on top of his gi. These outfits help their silhouettes feel distinct even at idle. Again, however, for the sake of this video, we're going to keep them in their classic outfits to try and keep them as close as possible to each other, and really dig into the animation details themselves. As we go through these attacks, keep these metaphors in mind for each character. Ryu is like a very deeply rooted tree. He's strong, sturdy, and very hard to move. Ken is like a runaway freight train. He's powerful, but in a very forward momentum kind of way. These two concepts will come up a lot as we dig into this. A quick note on terminology, most fighting games have 3 stages to their attacks: their startup frames, their active frames, and their recovery frames. Different moves will allocate different amounts of frames to each of these 3 sections to give the attacks a different feeling and use in combat. For animation purposes, I'll refer to these stages as anticipation, contact, and follow-through or recovery. There are details packed into all 3 stages of the attack, so it's good to know how they differ. With all that out of the way, let's get into how the animation conveys character in Street Fighter 6. Standing light punch. The first frame of an animation can really tell us a lot about where it's going and what type of attack it is. For Ryu, on his first frame, his hips start to rotate backwards. This helps indicate that he's going to reach with his upper body, but his lower body is going to try and stay where it is. Pointing his hips back is almost like pointing a part of his body back to where it eventually wants to go. In the recovery of the animation, you can see Ryu's hips rotating back to idle as he returns. Ken on this same start frame is only moving forward, and his hips don't have a lot of rotation in them on the way back at all. Another thing that Ryu does right away is bring up his offhand to protect his face. Ken isn't quite as careful and is actually pulling his offhand away from his face at the same time. Ryu also has that one extra frame of keeping his attacking arm close to his body before snapping the punch out, with Ken's being more direct of an in-between. These little things show Ryu being a bit more trained in practice, and Ken is a little bit more aggressive. In that same vein, during the recovery, Ryu quickly brings his fist back to protect his face, whereas Ken has a much more linear drop back down. Ken also is in a slow but continual move forward throughout the whole punch, even into some of the recovery when he should be going back to idle, emphasizing his forward momentum on the move. Standing medium punch. Once again, the first frame of the animation tells us a lot here. Ryu stays pretty stable, his feet are firmly planted, and his upper body doesn't have a ton of movement. Ken, on the other hand, has a big jump in his first frame. His weight drops, his leg completely moves, and his arms widen. He's going full force for this punch. Such a big change in the first frame shows us how big of a move he's about to do. Ryu is fairly close to his idle pose, and his silhouette is tight and compact. Ken is big and broad, and all of his limbs are in motion, with his arms being very wide and his knees pointing forward. On the swing itself, you can see Ken throwing his entire body into the move. He twists with his hips and his legs, his upper torso turns the opposite direction, and his arms have a very big range of motion to them. Ryu, on the other hand, stays pretty firmly planted. His feet don't move at all, and a lot of his body is actually twisting backwards, similar to his light punch, where his body is anticipating returning to where it started. Ryu also still has that protective hand coming back to his face in the recovery, and Ken actually opens up his offhand as he returns to idle, releasing a bit of that energy from the big move. Standing heavy punch. For the heavy punch, their start frames are pretty similar. Both have their legs beginning to rotate along with some hip motion. Ryu, however, has his head almost entirely locked in place, even though he's got some body motion. This keeps his eyes dead on target. Ken's head dips down as he's about to throw his entire body weight into this move. Even through the first few frames of the attack, when looking at the head, you can see just how stable Ryu is, and how much more aggressive Ken's attack is. On the attack itself, you can very clearly see Ryu still looking forward. Ken is a bit harder to tell with his hair, but I can see the animation being his head is actually turned away as he reaches as far as he can with his fists. Another note on the attack is how dead straight Ryu's punch is. It stays in the same height almost the entire way through the attack. Ken has a less direct punch, as you can see his arm travel almost over top and punching somewhat down on the opponent. Back to the anticipation, this is one of the widest stances Ryu has for his normals, but it's still kind of shallow compared to Ken's. Ken's legs reach as far as they possibly can, almost in a full A shape as his legs are fully extended. This again shows how much more forward momentum Ken wants to put behind this hit. On the recovery of these animations, you can see Ryu being very tightly controlled. He brings his arms back together in a pose similar to his idol, and always stays in a protected position. Ken really only brings back his attacking hand, with his offhand opening up similar to his medium punch, releasing some of that energy. Both of these moves showcase a lot of strength, but in two slightly different ways. One nice little detail too here on Ryu is actually the tassels on his headband. They make some really nice secondary animation to the attack since his body is so stable. You still feel the power because of how big of an overlap the tassels take. They have that nice straight line that then needs to curl as it catches up to him. Standing light kick. This move is probably the most similar of the 6 normal attacks. They both hit roughly the same contact pose and only have a few minor differences. For one, Ken has more swing in his arms than Ryu does. This is likely to drive a bit more power from twisting his body. As you can see here, Ken's arm swings sooner and also has a nice overlap where the arm has finished its motion, but the wrists and the fingers still have a bit of travel to them. Another big difference is in the recovery. Ryu again has his feet firmly planted back into their idle position, whereas Ken takes a few little extra steps to reshuffle himself back into his idle pose. Standing medium kick. Medium kick has a lot of nice little details in here. Overall, this one very much supports the whole tree versus train metaphor from earlier. Ken right off the bat is moving forward. He wants to cover a lot of distance with this kick, and he's aiming for the head. He brings his back foot up to where his front foot is, but doesn't quite pass it, allowing him to get more distance when the attack comes out. Ryu, on the other hand, spends his first couple frames repositioning his body, but maintaining his position in space. He brings his back foot all the way up past his front leg, so he can kick out without having to actually move forward. He also fully crosses both his legs and his arms, allowing him to pull with both his legs and arms as he expands out for the kick. It's almost like his arms are trying to tie a knot here and then pulling it really tight. Another nice little touch on Ryu's kick is the 1 frame delay in his pant legs catching up to where his foot is. This further emphasizes the power behind the move. On the recovery, Ryu has a very controlled adjustment back to idle. His leg has almost a 90-degree arc back to the floor, and his feet plant back into exactly where they need to be. He really keeps his body in position for this move, and still gets a lot of power. Ken has a less controlled move back to idle. He kicks higher, so it's harder to get back down in such a controlled way, so his leg travels down to the ground a bit more quickly. Standing heavy kick. The last move we'll go over is their heavy kick. This move has some of the biggest jumps on the first frame for Ken. His weight drops all the way down, his legs expand, his arms completely open up and change position. This move is going to use his entire body to get as much power as he can. Ryu still drops his weight on that first frame, but not nearly as far, and his limbs mostly stay close to his idle pose. You can also see his heels dig in a little bit as he drops his weight. The two have very different anticipation phases for the kick. Ryu is focusing on letting his body twist to build up the energy. He keeps his arms tight to his chest and feet firmly on the ground. He's also turning his head to really look where he's aiming his kick to be, which helps lead that twist. He also allows his arms to swing out first, which opens up his torso and lets his head look exactly where his foot needs to go as the foot follows. Ken, on the other hand, is pulling a lot of energy from his arms to wind this kick up. Even just a few frames into the animation, his arms have already hit some really big poses. He then pulls the arms back again to help get his torso the twist he needs to bring his leg around. After their torsos have done the work of winding the kick up, you'll notice both of them stay pretty still as their legs travel around for the attack. This is because their bodies have built up the energy for the attack and it's all being released in the leg. For Ryu, his leg comes all the way around his body, even bending backwards as it travels back to idle before his torso even begins to catch up. For Ken, his kick also goes all the way around his body and actually drives the torso to follow around the other way. A nice gameplay bonus here is these moves, while slow, are very easy to read because your eye really catches the leg moving for the active frames of the attack. In their recoveries, the major difference here is that Ken steps further forward from when he started the attack, as the momentum from the move is in such a forward direction. This also supports the gameplay where the move is actually forward advancing, meaning it gives him a bit more range and you can get closer to your opponent while doing it. Ryu's leg carries him around and plants exactly back into idle. Doesn't even need to shuffle it back into place from such a big move. He's done this kick a million times and does it with precision. Both characters also have some nice continued motion in their torso as they return to idle. For such a big move, they wouldn't be able to come back to idle and stay there, they'd have to go past it and then come back. In animation, this is called an overshoot. One final cool tidbit here for Ken is how well he matches his heavy kick attack pose from Street Fighter 3rd Strike. His fingers are all splayed out and his body is very contorted, something much easier to do in 2D than 3D, but I think Capcom really nailed the look and feel here. While this has been a lot of animation nitty-gritty, this is still only the 6 normal attacks in the game for Ryu and Ken. There's still all of their crouching moves, jumping moves, specials, supers, and more. There's so much love and care packed into the characters of Street Fighter 6. If you liked it, I'd love to hear in the comments of what you'd like to see more of. Even deeper dives on these two, other characters in the game, or other games entirely that you'd like to learn more about the animation of. Let me know. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the streets.